Hey, Rob Browne here with you in the studios with Brendan Martin, executive producer down in Ocala. We got a great show in store for you today. Tuesday, man, we're going to hammer it out again. Chris Plank of the Plank Show, KREF Radio out in Norman, Oak City, Bricktown, covers the Oklahoma Sooners. He is the sideline reporter for the Boomer Sooner Football Network. Going to join us in the leadoff spot. Right after that, we'll go to Columbia, South Carolina, 107.5 The Game with our good friend Will Gunter talking about the Gamecocks. Right after that, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, checks in from Oxford on Ole Miss, and we'll go to Titletown, Tuscaloosa, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. Smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. Hey, man, we're growing this show. We are blessed to have great viewers. We love all of y'all. Support our sponsors. Get pen and paper handy because here we come. Great show on store.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, folks, we are 264 hours away and away from the start of the college football season for Oklahoma, that is, out in Norman. And I'll bring Will Gunter on here in just a few minutes from Columbia, South Carolina. Right after Chris, we're going to kind of get these planes stacked up on the runway. Running a few minutes behind this morning. But, Chris, y'all start off in Norman against Temple, and it'll be September 21st when Josh Heupel comes back, man, to Norman. That ought to be a raucous atmosphere. But it's pretty cool watching SEC Network and seeing all this Oklahoma stuff. I've known about Brent Venables because every time the D.C. job opened up at Auburn, Tommy Tuberville would have him on his short list, and he never could close the deal. But when I saw Brent Venables walking down Radio Row at Media Days, I'm like, that's a badass. That's Matt Dillon. He looks the part of what Oklahoma's football coach. I've always followed that program, but how fired up are you, man? Because I am bouncing off the walls, and I've only had 3 sips of coffee so far.
Well, I would like to apologize to you and Brendan because I think I'm part of the problem. Number one, a rarity. I hit traffic, which never happens here in Norman, and then at least on a non-game day. And then number two, I get to the studio and I'm locked out. So it's been a mess. So my apologies.
You should have seen what we were going through.
Okay.
If you like the law or sausage, don't ever watch one of them being made or live TV or radio.
So I apologize, Brendan. I apologize, Rob. But no, you said it. You said it. It's going to be a great atmosphere. The swagger that Brent has. Now he's got to. I think he'd be the first one to tell you they got to back it up and they got to go win games. There's only so much your reputation as a defensive coordinator can get you when you take that step up to a head coach after a couple of years.
Yeah.
This is that third year. This is when you're supposed to take that step. I saw that you got a South Carolina insider coming up next, right?
Yeah.
Near and dear to our heart is obviously what Shane Beamer has made football, even though he was a short time. But his year 3 didn't quite carry the momentum from year 2. So the year 3 for Brent Venables has got to carry that momentum that he was able to build in year 2. And, Rob, it's kind of wild. I think we talked about this. And yes, the Tennessee game is going to be crazy, and we're excited about it. But this all starts with what kind of quarterback is Jackson Arnold going to be, and what kind of protection is he going to get. Those have been the 2 big issues in camp so far. And I got to tell you something. I'm intrigued because you have, you got Dylan Gabriel, whom they basically said, hey, man, go do your thing. This is Jackson's team now. And he goes to Oregon, and they're a national championship contender, and he's a Heisman favorite.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild when you balance that. But no, Sooner fans are pretty fired up. You can sense it. School started back up on Monday, so there's a good buzz around town, and it's a different buzz because it's the SEC for sure.
Yeah. Well, who has had better quarterback play in the last 20 years? Go back to Sam Bradford, and you look at Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts goes out there for a year, and we're leaving them off. Josh Heupel was a runner-up for the Heisman out of Millbank, South Dakota. No, Josh is from Aberdeen, South Dakota. I pheasant hunt up there, man. I love South Dakota. We shoot so many roosters up there and sharp tails and jump shoot ducks out in the field, man. That's good old days. I love it. But what I see with Oklahoma, man, I love Venable's office. I was watching something last night with Marty and McGee. Yeah. How comfortable? Where is Brent Venables from? Is he from Oklahoma?
No, he's a Kansas boy. You know,
Okay.
he was born and raised, and he's got an incredible backstory. And he tells it. You know, his mom and his dad. You know, his dad walked out. His dad left him and his brothers, and his mom raised him, and he was the product of a strong woman, a strong mother, and she went through a lot. There's stories of an abusive stepfather in there too. I mean, Rob, it's crazy to see everything that he's overcome. So he's a fighter, dude. He is something else to watch whenever he's grinding away. And again, you know, it's a big year. It's a big year.
No, I think as a defensive coach, you know, he's got kids on the team at Clemson still. He was there for 10 years, and the drop-off since he left Clemson it's been noticeable for sure. But what he brings to Oklahoma, I go back to his first year. You lose 4 of the last 5 games, each by a field goal. Right. Last year you win 10, you lose to Jetfish in Arizona in the bowl game. But you've won 6 of the last 7, 11 of the last 15 in the Red River Shootout against Texas. Now, the rest of the world doesn't know that because Texas, you know, they're supposed to, you know, they're back. Oklahoma, in terms of winning, I said this when you were on the show with us July 26th, and everybody on that panel was like, get that guy back. He's awesome. but 52 conference championships. Doesn't matter what conference you're playing in, that's powerful. 7 national championships, 7 Heisman Trophy winners, 4 coaches, only school in college football history, 4 coaches who've won 100 or more games. You all are going to figure this out, I think, rather quickly.
I hope so. I feel it. It's kind of wild too, Rob, because that expectation, regardless of what happened last year or what happened the year before that, you know, it doesn't change. There are fans that look at this year's top 25 and say, we're better than these teams ahead of us.
Yeah.
It's just, bro, it is a whole new world when you look at that top 25 and then you look at the top 10 and you're like, we're playing like 6 of the top 12 teams in the country this year, we being Oklahoma. Yeah. So it's been wild. Now, there is a lot of frustration, I think, because Texas is entering with a lot of hype, pick number 2 in the preseason poll. Yeah. And I think they're good. I think that's a really good football team. But it's almost as if, you know, the Oklahoma game didn't happen last year. I mean, somehow magically erased from people's memory. Yeah. And then in that, I think Texas is a really good football team, but they're replacing about as much as they ever have from draftable guys. I mean, go look at the NFL draft. In Wikipedia, I'm a big Wikipedia guy. Yeah. But if you look at Texas football draft history, you know, over the last 10, 15 years, there's 2, 3 guys, and there's these small little blocks. Then you get to last year, and it's this massive block. There's like 11 dudes that got drafted. And even though they weren't all first rounders, all the guys drafted were difference makers for Texas. They lost their 2 interior defensive linemen who were beasts. They lost their best defensive player in Jalen Ford, who was an all Big 12 defensive player of the year. They lost their top, 5 receivers? So it's odd. And now they've lost their 2 running backs. Well, one of the preseason all SEC pick, and then you lose a freshman, and suddenly it's like, oh, no, that's okay. The guy that was behind him was actually better. Well, why didn't you vote for him for all SEC if you think he was better? So I think there's a lot of frustration in the hype for Texas and the questioning of Oklahoma, but it is fair to question Oklahoma Rob. I mean, there is one essential returning starter on the offensive line. Jacob Sexton started the last 2 games when Tyler Guyton got dinged up. But that's it on the offensive line, like 2 starts. It's a whole new look offensively with a new OC, co-OCs. It's different, man. And I think that's why there's so many questions, because Oklahoma doesn't return a quarterback, and Jackson Arnold didn't necessarily wow people in his debut. So it's okay to question Oklahoma. It's just wild how people look and say, oh, Quinn Ewers is back. Oh, they were good last year. Well, they're going to be good this year. Yeah. They lost a lot in Austin, man.
Yeah, and I think he's missed 5 games the last 2 years. You also look at Oklahoma, the defense. You got Danny Stutzman, Bowen, the defensive back. It's defensive linemen. How deep is Oklahoma on the front 7?
Yeah, Brent Venables is meeting with the media as we talk right now tonight. He's meeting. They're doing practices in the evening. But last Tuesday, he met with the media, and he said that they feel good with about 9 to 11 guys. And that's a big number now. And also, we've been in a bit of a defensive vortex at Oklahoma, and we're getting sucked in. Howard Stern fans, it's like the Benji vortex, and you're just sucked into this belief that it's better, but it never really materializes. This year feels, seems, and looks different, right? You look at some of those guys on the defensive line. You look at Dominic Williams, who came in from TCU. Look at DeJoun Terry, who was in from Tennessee last year. They look like SEC defensive tackles. Yeah. Jaden Jackson and David Stone, the freshman, look like SEC defensive linemen. So, and I'm just talking about the interior. The edge guys, it's exciting, that they feel like they have those kind of numbers.
What the fan base, you talk Sooner football 9 to 12 Monday through Friday on KREF. How jacked up are they about these SEC games?
I think it's like cautious optimism. In other words, the big joke now is, Rob, all we wanted to do was play Nebraska at night. And a lot of people think that's what I think I told you that last time I came on.
Oh, I love that.
All we wanted to do was play Nebraska at night. Now we got to go to Ole Miss. We got to go to LSU. We got to go to Auburn. Wait a minute. Hold on. Even though some might say South Carolina's down, I've seen that quarterback. He's good. Yeah. So Tennessee's coming here. I could go through the whole list. It's so exciting when you see the names on the schedule and you see, all over town, buddy. When you guys come here, it is really cool. There's flags on light poles. There's businesses that have put OU and the SEC out there, and it's really embraced. But there's a great unknown. Oklahoma always wanted to be in that conversation, and always has been in that conversation with the big boys. Yeah. But when they
are one of the
but when it comes playoff time, outside of one game, kind of got our heads kicked in. Yeah. So now it's all right, let's go. Let's take this step up to where it's no longer just getting there. Let's do what it takes to take that next step. And a schedule like this, not the kindest thing the SEC has done in year one, but the fans are so excited about having the seat at the table, and they got to prove it. They got to prove it this year. It's going to be really tough, man. That is a hard schedule, but it's what you ask for whenever you join this league, and they're pumped about it. The fans are pumped.
Well, yeah, and the first season, the learning curve, whatever it is, Oklahoma's been on the stage for so that they live in the fishbowl. I mean, every coach there. You go back to the 1930s during the Dust Bowl, Oklahoma football rose from that as a source of pride. And, one of the Oklahoma guys was talking about, the weather in the South. It's been really hot. And hey, Oklahoma's in the South, people. I don't know. A lot of people, if you go to Oklahoma, it is a red state. The people there, they're like people in Alabama, Arkansas, and Mississippi. I mean, tell people real quick, and we're going to get on into this more next week if you can join us again.
Sure.
Try to have you on more often. So many things to ask for people coming to Norman for the first time. Yeah. What do you tell them to do? Where can they listen to your show for sure, and how can they follow you?
Yeah, go follow me on Twitter at Plank Show. I always have the link out there. But when you're coming to Norman, there's a lot of work that's still being done. Yeah. They are we've got a massive casino in town, baby. It's called Riverwind Casino. And if you like to gamble, we got you covered with a place that when you walk in it, you feel like you're in Vegas. It's incredible. But right in front of it, and that's That's right off of, we're really getting in the weeds here, Rob. That's right off I-35. That's right by where I live.
Yeah.
So not that I live in a casino, but
Yeah.
right over by there. And it's a mess right now. They've torn it up. So a little patience still with construction around the area. They're building a brand new RV lot that's supposed to be state of the art, because in all the studies that we did, the city of Normandy, they found out we need more RV spaces. And so they're building a $1 billion lot essentially. But there's things you want to do. You know, when you come to Norman, you want to walk around and experience the facilities. We've got the best softball facility in all of the country in Love's Field. You walk around Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, you get that feel, you know, of the greatness that is played there. City-wise, you know, things to do in Norman. Again, growing, trying to add more. Campus Corner is fun on game day. There's good restaurant options over there. I'm a big fan of a place called Pepe Delgado's, which can never do you wrong. Good O'Connell's is like a nostalgia place you got to go to and have a cold beer and enjoy a burger. But, you know, I there's so much fun stuff to do, and there's so many neat things, but yet we're trying to add to it. It's like I've got a good resume, okay, but I need to add some things to my resume to really make sure that you want me for this job. Norman has a very good resume. We've got some things we need to add to make sure that when you come in, it's like, okay, this is more than just in and out for football. And it's there, but it needs to get better. And I think everyone within the community and the university is working together to make that a reality.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron. Chris, awesome having you on, man.
Thanks, Rob. And again, I'm so sorry, dude. I'm gonna figure out my equipment at some point and not screw up your whole show, buddy. You have me on anytime. I'd love to have you on my show anytime.
Listen, and I'll do it. And I'll tell you, I've got the best producer in the world, Brendan Martin, executive producer, who's doing all this stuff behind the scenes. But we will do it and be talking, and it's gonna be fun because SEC is a giant family, and it's a passionate group of people, and we take a lot of pride. And we just added 2 more members, and it's just it's a contiguous footprint. You see that map behind me? You need to get one of these maps behind me from Bonewood Brenda. She hand carved that out of Cyprus.
That's nice.
Yeah. So let me know if you want one of them. But Chris, again, they follow you. What's your Twitter handle? Give us a retweet if you would. We help it. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, at Plank Show, give me a follow. Rob, I appreciate you. Brendan, I appreciate you, man. And thanks so much for having me on, buddy. Anytime.
All right, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. That is Chris Plank of the Plank Show out in Norman, Oklahoma. Let's switch gears now. Yesterday, we had on a guy from Columbia, Missouri. Today, we head down to South Carolina. Will Gunter, 107.5. The Game. Will, appreciate your patience. A wild ride this morning. Things happen overnight that we don't know about. Thank God I've got, it's like having Brendan Martin as executive producer is like having Chris Kyle in the deer stand with you. That great of a producer. And, you know, doing radio, you were on this morning in South Carolina and Florence and Myrtle Beach and Columbia and all over. Last week when we talked about South Carolina, and I've gone back and watched Shane Beamer on Marty and McGee, and they showed him pictures of him with his dad, Frank Beamer, legendary coach at Virginia Tech. This guy knows what he's doing. What are the expectations from your fans and you for South Carolina this year? They've got Oklahoma. It's a different league, but Shane Beamer and those guys, they've got talent. What's different about them this year?
It's going to be a great question. I was listening to Chris there. I know he said Brent Venables was speaking already, and then Shane Beamer will speak today at 1:00. And it's really a learning process for South Carolina fans this year with a new quarterback in Lenora Sellers, who we've only seen limited snaps from. The defense played better at the end of last year, but some of that was because of the quarterbacks they faced and the teams they faced, and that made them look a little bit better. There's so many questions about the wide receiving group and who's going to step up. And it looks like at least there's a guy that's kind of stepping up, a Florida State transfer, Vandrevius Jacobs. But it's just saying Rocket Sanders is now here from.
Yeah.
Work. Yeah, there's too many questions. I don't think it's a bad football. I think it's a 3-9 or 4-8 type football season. But I think there's just so many questions as to what this football team will look like, especially in week 2 and 3 against Kentucky and then LSU.
Well, let me ask you this: the transfer portal. Across the state, Dabo, he doesn't like it. But recruiting high school players. You mentioned last week South Carolina's really prioritizing the in-state. Let's talk about what's happening, the top 10 players in the Palmetto State as of today.
Yeah, well, South Carolina lost on one of the top players there in terms of Amir Adams, who's a four-star defensive lineman. Was actually a guy that they thought they led for the majority of the process and ended up losing. It was kind of a shock. He committed to Clemson, I think, back in March or April. It was a little bit of a shock for South Carolina. We're still not exactly sure kind of how that went down, but I think he's pretty firm to Clemson. In terms of some other guys, the state of South Carolina just lost one of the top wide receivers in Malik Clark, who was committed to Florida State. Cedric Surratt, another four-star offensive lineman, is committed to South Carolina. And then the Gamecocks have picked up some guys that I don't know if they're under the radar. I don't know if they're under-scouted. Jaden Sellers, who is the brother of the quarterback, Lenore Sellers, is committed to South Carolina. They have a guy that I really like physically. I don't know how good a football player he's going to be, but Jaquel Holloman, who's 6'1", about 200 pounds, can play running back. They like him there. He was the state champion in I think the 100 meters, ran something like a 10.83. I might have those numbers a little off just because I'm not a track guy, but he's an interesting guy. Could play the nickel back, could add some bulk and play linebacker. And then they also have a commitment from a quarterback who was originally committed to Wake Forest and Cutter Woods out of Westside, who's been a fantastic high school quarterback. He's been a really good high school quarterback. Translate, but I do think there's a level of finding quarterbacks who might be a little under the radar in this day and age that will stick with your program and not transfer out after 1 or 2 years.
Well, and we talked about that yesterday with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia, about them telling guys, hey, you can be a number 2 here and get developed, or you can go somewhere else and throw your hat in the ring. That works. The 3 C's that I hear about recruiting and everything now is campus, culture, coaching. Sounds like Shane Beamer is working more on that. Look at the culture his dad developed at Virginia Tech. Look where they were and look what he built. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, I don't know. As a person who covered recruiting a lot, that's how I got my start into the industry really back in about 07, 08, 09. Everything's evolving so much. I mean, facilities are so much a part of it. Campus is big. Winning is big, man. These kids, I mean, look at the transfer portal. They go one place for 1 year and then want to transfer out. There is a character level, I think, to it. South Carolina fans more so have seen that with a guy like De'Carrion Joyner, who could have transferred out, played quarterback somewhere. A guy like Luke Doty, who is stuck around the program. Recruiting's a different animal these days. I could spend 3 hours with you debating how you do the transfer portal versus how you recruit high school players, and now scholarship limits are going to 105. You got to remember, you can sign. This is very different than what people are saying. You can sign as many kids as you want. You can sign 105 kids, but on August 1st, you got to have 105 or a max on scholarship. I guess it's still 85, but I'm looking into the future. So recruiting, it's so different now with the transfer portal and everything. I don't know I really truly don't know if 80% of college coaches have figured out the balance between transfer portal and high school recruiting.
I'd like to see the numbers on what it's done to junior college recruiting. And then what percentage, probably half the kids that go into the portal never get picked up. I think that's fair to say. And a lot of them go in the portal, and a certain percentage, single digits, and they go back to the school they wanted to leave. Look at Parrish, Ole Miss to Miami. He's back at Ole Miss. What does that do to your locker room?
Well, now South Carolina's got a guy who did that. Gilbert Edmond went to Florida State last year and is now back at South Carolina. And that's even from amateur, what is truly amateur athletics, even though that's evolving, what I call high school. You're seeing that, man. It's easy to convince. When I coached AAU basketball and high-level AAU basketball, I learned to only have about 8 or 9 players max, because if you didn't play somebody, if somebody had to wait their turn and they were simply beaten out, they were going to go find another AAU team. Well, that's what college football is now. If you don't get your starting position right away, Chris kind of talked about it. I mean, look what happened with Dylan Gabriel and Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold, they couldn't even wait one. He couldn't wait one more year for a guy that's probably a Heisman candidate. And Oklahoma kind of had to force Dylan Gabriel out to a lesser extent to give Jackson Arnold the job. Otherwise, Jackson Arnold was going to be like, look, man, I served my 1 year. You play me now or else. Look at Malachi Nelson. Malachi Nelson just got beat out at Boise State this week. Obviously the former number 1 player in the year, sat behind Caleb Williams for a year, looked around, realized he might get beat out by Miller Moss, who did just get named the starter there. So he transfers to Boise State. Now he's beat out. It's a transfer portal has opened the door to, hey, play me now or else.
Well, but you just made a good point about a guy is at Southern Cal as a backup, goes to Boise, thinks he's going to get the job, and he gets beat out. I think prior to the portal being the law of the land, which was October 15th of 2018, 42% of quarterbacks finished their college careers at a school different from where they started. Now that number, you're right. What they did so South Carolina, Spencer Rattler comes in there, and he didn't have the success. At one time when he was at Oklahoma, he was thought to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And, South Carolina offensive line, I like this question here. Somebody said a travesty of injuries on the offensive line last year. How deep is the offensive line for South Carolina and the defensive line? Because we say it, but it's just a fact. It's the line of scrimmage league. You got to have depth.
Well, depth and talent are two different things. I start laughing because I don't know. I don't, we hear all this stuff and I joke, do they have bodies? Do they have people that they can, if somebody goes down, do they have another guy that they can put out there? Yeah. I mean, they're not lacking on number of guys, but are they good? Are they good players? Most schools carry 15, 16 offensive linemen, so that's a 3 deep, and you can kind of get through that. But do you have guys that are ready to play? South Carolina right now, they're going to probably start 2 transfers on the offensive line, and Torricelli Simpkins from HBCU, from North Carolina A&T, and they're going to start Kamar Bell, who's coming from Florida Atlantic. Now, they've recruited really well. South Carolina's recruited exceptionally well in the offensive line. As a matter of fact, one of the starters is going to be a true freshman in Josiah Thompson at left tackle. But to answer your question, that's something we're going to learn about. Are they good? Can they block Old Dominion in 2 weeks? Can they block LSU in week 3? Who's got, you can have depth. Depth sometimes is easy to build. Talented depth, which is where South Carolina's always struggled, is entirely different.
Well, you look at your first 3 games. You got to play in Lexington against Kentucky. You come back home against LSU. South Carolina seems to do it every year. They're going to whack somebody that just doesn't see it coming. How big is that road game in Lexington, KY? To set the tone for the whole season.
You got to think about all the intangibles that are involved in that game, whether it's Kentucky losing their offensive coordinator. They will likely start. I've not looked to see if they've officially named Brock Vandergrift the starter for that game, but it's going to be former five-star, talking about transfer portal, Brock Vandergrift from Georgia, who's now at Kentucky. It'll be his first legitimate college. It'll be a second college start, first legitimate SEC start for him. How does he perform? South Carolina's going to go up there with kind of a retooled offensive line with Rocket Sanders and with a redshirt freshman who will be making his first SEC start. That game is so intriguing, again, on so many different levels. And you're right, South Carolina should win Old Dominion. They're a 21-point favorite. But that game gets you off to a 2-0 start. After LSU, you have Akron. So even if you were to lose the LSU noon game here in Columbia, you should finish up September at 3-1 before you go into that October slate that's back-to-back. Mississippi should be top 10 based on their September schedule and not losing. Alabama on October 12th, and that trip to Oklahoma on October 19th. So to answer your question, you lose that Kentucky game, you could be staring really down the barrel of a 2-5 start there going into November. And they did that last year, and that makes it almost impossible. So you see the difference. You beat Kentucky, maybe you're 3-1 going into October, getting Mississippi at home and hoping to steal that, which they believe will be a night game based on this flex scheduling.
Yeah. Well, one more thing before we go, and let's do it again next week. And sorry to have to be kind of rushing this morning, but what do people need to know about this South Carolina football team that and they don't know yet until now?
based on SEC Media Day, I assume this because Shane Beamer said it in the spring, but apparently we're still waiting for official confirmation. Lenore Sellers is the quarterback. It's not going to be Robbie Ashford. Luke Doty is
No.
not the quarterback. I think one Georgia beat writer, I think it was one Auburn beat writer, said that Robbie Ashford had a leg up. That wasn't true. One Georgia beat writer assumed because Luke Doty came to SEC Media Day, he was the starting quarterback. It should be Lenore Sellers. Now, I will say, I think the defensive lines, I think the defense is going to be better. The pieces are in place. The pieces are in place. Maybe they stink. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it when you ask that question, that right now is what everybody around here is discussing. What do we know? What do we think? And we don't know anything right now, and really won't again until maybe after that Kentucky game.
Oh, the coaches invite you to practice every day and spend an hour or two. I'm kidding.
Yeah. We've been joking about that. Steve Spurrier had an NFL camp mentality about him during his time here, where the first 2 weeks we could go watch the whole practice. We could watch scrimmages, and then Will Muschamp came over, and if you were able to get in there for 3 minutes, we could have sent you over to North Korea to go steal secrets. The truth is, and Will Muschamp did. Shane's a little bit, he will open it up for about the first 30 minutes, but it's stretching and it's special teams work.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're very limited, but that it harkens back to the day where Steve Spurrier would open the gates, fans would come in, media would come in, and you could watch these kids. And the first 2 weeks of fall camp was great because people could call the radio show and say, well, I saw so-and-so out there and they look good. I saw so-and-so and they look slow. And you can debate it. Now we're all in here just ballparking stuff.
Yeah. Hey, look, how do people follow you, keep up with you? And we'll retweet your stuff and give us a retweet on this. And love having you on. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, on Twitter, at Will, W-I-L, Gunter, G-U-N-T-E-R is how you can do that. And, of course, you can always download our 107.5 The Game app and catch us. I know tomorrow we're going to be talking about a lot of Brad Crawford from 24/7 Sports is going to come on and join us tomorrow. He's got a game-by-game prediction for South Carolina. So we're going to talk about that. But we're also going to get into a little bit of overrated, underrated across the SEC and across the country as it pertains to the top 25. And Brian Edwards from Vegas Insider may join us to talk about his picks. I know Brian does a great job. He's all over the country on a bunch of different radio stations. But so tomorrow will be a lot of focus on kind of who we think's overrated, who we think's underrated. And you can download, if you're watching somewhere and you're not in the state of South Carolina, 107.5 The Game on your app, on your smartphone. And of course, if you're in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach, you can catch us, and we always appreciate that.
Hey, we appreciate you being on here. Have a great week, okay?
Y'all too. Take care.
All right, you bet. All right, let me say something real quick before we bring in Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, about Coolmore Logistics and Transportation. They are Memphis-based with a global reach. Anything that you need shipped, they can move seed, cotton, lumber, steel coils. They can even move ductile pipe, which is used to put underground for clean drinking water, like American ductile pipe. Hit that QR code. They've got a full bank of phones. You go in there, it looks like a trading floor at a hedge fund or a bond firm. They put the word out that a load's got to be delivered cross country, anywhere from Miami to Los Angeles. Within a matter of minutes, their phones blow up, and they find the drivers to get it done. Nobody will outwork Coolmore Logistics and Transportation. Also, great folks at Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Audrey and I were out there Saturday. I'll be by there again this week. Stuff is coming in every day. Check out this new marsh wear, great outdoor hunting clothing, the Filson. And, man, they got over 7,000 pairs of boots made from any and everything that has ever ran, flew, swam, or crawled. Great-looking boots at HewlettandDunn.com in Collierville. And the vitamin shop, man, get your vitamins. Take care of them. I'm using this prebiotic stuff in the morning. It's unbelievable. The vitamin shop in Oxford and Olive Branch, Mississippi, open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. All of our sponsors can be found on our website at Sidelines with an S, sidelines.live. Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider. What a wild day, running a little behind, but listen live or listen at your leisure. Start with Yancey. Look, man, we are 264 hours away from the start of week one. Now, we've got these games coming up Saturday. There's one over in Dublin, Florida State and Georgia Tech. But SEC games, well, Thursday, a week from Thursday, Missouri starts. But let's talk about what's going on at Ole Miss, and then we'll bounce back between Oxford and Tuscaloosa and talk some college football for the rest of the show like we've been doing.
Well, I guess unfortunately with Ole Miss, there's an off-field issue that happened with defensive lineman Xavier Harris on Sunday. So that was kind of the talk on Monday. You never want that going into week zero. He's not a starter, but he's definitely like a 1-8 type guy, 6'7", 335, and they think he's got a bright NFL future. So, got off to a little rough start there. Injury wise, they've got a lot of wide receivers still beat up with some hamstrings and groin issues. Deion Smith, they're still trying to get eligible. So, there's been smoother sailings headed into week zero, but I think all in all, everything's okay.
All right, Rodney, similar situation in Tuscaloosa?
Well, I don't know. I'm actually on the way to practice right now. I know that they had, the second scrimmage, which we covered the press conference post scrimmage with Coach DeBoer, but also, talking to our sources because the scrimmage here was closed to the media. Sounds like it went extremely well. It was an extraordinarily physical scrimmage that they had. Some people that had the opportunity to watch it described it as violent, actually. But it was a really physical scrimmage that they had, and now I think they're paring down and getting ready to move into game week mode here very soon.
Tell y'all both something funny. Buddy Martin and I did an SECU podcast. We do some of these specialty podcasts. Yesterday, Buddy and Kirk McNair, and Kirk said one time when he was working for Coach Browne at Alabama, they used to have open scrimmages. Y'all remember those days? You could go to practice and everything. Well, Coach Bryant got a good case of the red ass and said, all right, it's shut down. Nobody gets through. The Berlin Wall, So Kirk McNair's like, yes, sir, Coach Bryant. Nobody could come in. And after the scrimmage, and Kirk said he had to individually call every one of those reporters on the phone, and there were no voice machines or anything back then, so that was an ordeal in itself. So after the scrimmage, he said Coach Bryant came over and he said, Kirk, where are the writers? He goes, well, Coach, you said nobody was invited to come to the scrimmage. And he goes, well, they're our friends. How about that? I mean, that happens every day. Y'all both get a text early in the morning. Hey, it's Coach DeBoer. Hey, it's Coach Kiffin. You want to drop by? We'll do breakfast at the Beacon or at Sutherlanders or wherever, or out at the Holiday. I mean, Yancey, this is fun though. Thinking about we're going back to something great. I feel it, Yancey.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the more exciting college football seasons in the history. I really do. With opening up the playoffs, it's just opened up the field to so many teams. And also, I think, with so much roster movement, people are able to become better football teams. Yeah, better rosters. I just think it's going to be an extraordinary season. I really do.
And Rodney, looking at what Kalen DeBoer's got in his first year, will you break it down? I got a text from somebody from Ted Underhill, okay? And Ted said, can Yancey explain to me, or can Rodney explain to me how Alabama can be this loaded despite losing two of their freshmen in that recruiting class that ranked number 2 in the country, and 29 other guys that left via the portal, processed, or whatever? It's amazing. And again, that is a question from Ted Underhill in Evening Shade, Arkansas, who says, roll damn Tide.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this: they do have some depth issues at different spots. There's no question about that. I mean, you look at the corner spot; they've got some inexperience, got some really good young players, and The offensive line, I think they could certainly use a couple of more guys with experience. Even though I think they're going to have a good offensive line, but it's a depth. I think right now they probably only have like 6 or 7 guys they're comfortable with.
Wow.
And they'd like to have a couple of more but again, it's a process of development, and that's kind of where they are right now. But, look, first of all, obviously Nick Saban recruited extremely well over his time here. And then I think Kalen DeBoer did a fantastic job when he got here of retention, and then adding to what they had in terms of bringing in a few extra guys in that recruiting class, but also in the portal, they did a really good job. So that's kind of where they are right now. And, again, they've got some question marks. Let me be clear about that.
Yeah. Well, Yancey, the Guinness Book of World Record people also just texted me and said, hold on, stop the presses. You mentioned a player possibly being ineligible. Rodney, did you hear that? Deion Smith, Slim Pickens said, what in the wide world of sports is going on here, boys?
Yes, it feels like 1995 again, doesn't it, with that
Or 1989.
eligibility issue. He's literally, Deion's been standing at each practice for 2 weeks waiting to get cleared. So, I guess he's getting in limited mental reps, standing there in street clothes. But yeah, it's very odd now for somebody's eligibility. Of course, he's a JUCO guy, and there's they got to wait for all the classes that he took off the internet to get cleared from the places he took the classes. So, yeah, it is. It's odd that we never have those issues anymore, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I like that mental reps. That is, can happen. Right, Rodney.
And maybe he's not pressing it either. Maybe he's like, man, it feels much better to be standing here doing mental reps than out there because it has been hot. But how about the weather today? I
Oh,
mean, already starting to feel like fall. Got in the 50s last night,
yeah.
early 60s this morning. It kind of gets the blood running.
Oh, it does. And Rodney, talk about some of the newcomers that you expect to play a big role their first year. One that comes to mind, a real shocker out of Saraland, Ryan Williams. Is it unusual to see a freshman that good? And who would you compare him to just from what you've seen? I'm not trying to be unfair and say, oh, he's the next Julio Jones or Devontae Smith, but how good is he? You've seen them all.
Well, first of all, it's unusual for a 17-year-old kid that's supposed to be a junior going into his senior year right now. He just completed his junior year of high school and,
exactly.
Obviously reclassified. So, yeah, for his age, it is pretty phenomenal the way he's adjusted. And it's not just from a physical standpoint, athletic standpoint, but also from a maturity level that he has is pretty phenomenal. I mean, it really is. His teammates really like him. I don't think there's a lot of ego here with him, which is, again, a little bit unusual for a kid that's had so much success, so much recognition at such an early age. But, yeah, he's handled everything really, really well. He's had a great camp. I know he's made big plays in both scrimmages. And, again, you said compare him to someone or compare him. Look, when I look at him, you look at how fluid he is, how he adjusts to the ball, the way he's built. I mean, he can't help but remind you to some extent of Devontae Smith. I mean, he's just extremely fluid.
Scary.
He's real. Well, he's real silky. He's real silky, like Devontae was. You don't realize, this guy's running right past you. He just looks so smooth. But the thing is, the way he makes it look so easy. He's had a couple of drops. I mean, they all do. But he just makes it look so easy the way he can snag the ball. I mean, it's like he's like an incredible center fielder out there tracking that ball. And that's the way Devontae was. So, he's and some other guys. Rico Scott, a true freshman receiver from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who just got here this summer. He had 2 touchdown receptions in the scrimmage, on Saturday. So he had a big day as well. But no, I think most of the guys, Rob, that we're talking about that probably have a great chance to help to contribute. are going to be guys that um, the portal guys.
Yeah.
I think those
Yeah.
are the guys. Keon Sabb, Damani Jackson, those guys. I think are going to have a tremendous opportunity. Plus, you've got Xavier Brown, a true freshman corner, who I think is going to got a chance to start.
Yeah.
Jalen Mbakwe could
Mm-hmm.
return punts. He could possibly push there at that corner spot. There's Zay Mincy. So they've got several guys that are newcomers that I think have a chance to make a mark.
Yeah. I wish we could use bump music on here because we would use the song from my wife's favorite singer, Tom Jones. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. So it's not unusual segment. Yancey, tell us about a freshman, newcomer, JUCO, portal guy, kind of same type of thing because they nobody's working the portal better than Coach Lane Kiffin and his staff.
Yeah, I think the three freshman defensive linemen, William Eccles, Jamarius Brown, and Cam Franklin. Those are guys to really kind of keep an eye on. I think they're going to make an impact at some points this season. They're coming into a deep D line, so it's going to be hard to claw their way into playing time, but they're going to get some, and they're going to be really good, those three.
Well, you mentioned Camarion Franklin out of Lake Cormorant,
Yep.
Walls, Mississippi, 48 miles from campus, a stud. What about Walter Nolan? He was at Texas A&M, and that supposedly the greatest class ever signed. That wasn't the best locker room for sure. How good is Walter Nolan? How big is he? 370 pounds or something like that?
No,
6'10"?
no, he's actually not that. He's about 295, 300. The thing about Walter is that you would expect him to kind of be outspoken because of
Yeah,
the transfer and the hoopla. You can't get two words out of his mouth. He is very, very quiet.
yeah,
He's very professional in the way that he handles his business. And what makes him so special is his get off. He's
yeah.
he's got as quick of a first step as anybody I've seen come through the program in years.
Yeah. Rodney, the staff at Alabama, Freddie Roach is still there, but you've also got Kane Womack. He left his head coaching job at South Alabama to be defensive coordinator at Alabama. How similar is this defense going to look to what Coach Saban and his staff ran, and how different do you expect it to be based on personnel?
Well, I think that's what we all want to see. I think that's one of the things that we've talked about, that in this transition, that it's going to be a unique situation because you've got a guy, Nick Saban, who did it for 17 years. The way he did it, you expected the greatness out of the defense, right? And now
Yeah,
and it's nothing against Kane Womack, certainly. I mean, I think that he's doing everything we hear. The feedback has been extremely positive. I think the players have really adjusted to him, his coaching. They really received him extremely well. It's basically 4-2-5. I mean, that's Alabama played that, the nickel defense quite a bit under Nick Saban. Basically, that's what their base became because of, the way the game changed. But I think this is going to be a more aggressive defense. I think up front, you're going to see defensive linemen not necessarily having those two gap responsibilities that can make plays, create negative plays. They're really, they're going to play differently in the secondary. When I say that, really what it comes down to is, Nick Saban taught one technique, but I think, Womack's going to have his guys with their eyes on the ball. They're going to be trying to make plays and create turnovers rather than play. Nick Saban had them playing the receiver, and playing different technique. But other than that, I mean, I think there's probably a lot of similarities.
all right. I'm going to bounce back and forth. Biggest story, Yancey, that you're seeing in the SEC, whether it's at Ole Miss or anywhere else, that you think is going to be a big deal in the 24 football season? I'll ask it first to Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Check him out Monday nights, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. And of course, Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, and Tighter Insider TV Tuesday nights at 6:30 p.m. Catch it live with Gary Harris. But start with you, Yancey.
Yeah, I think unquestionably the communication in the helmet with the quarterbacks. This is going to allow them, especially for the tempo offenses, which now about 85% of Power Five teams are in there. Everybody's doing tempo these days. So you've got up to 15 seconds on the play clock to let the quarterback, have communication with the OC or the head coach, whoever is going to be that point man, and get in the right place.
Rodney?
Rob, you cut out. I didn't even hear what you said. I'm actually walking up to practice, so may
Okay.
have a bad
Hey, you
connection.
can't get better than this, man. Walking to practice. I love this. Now, the question I had was to Yancey first and to you. What's the biggest story you see going on right now that could be a factor, whether it's in Oxford or in your case, Tuscaloosa, that you think is going to be a big story in the SEC in the 2024 football season?
Uh, I really haven't thought about that, Rob. A big story. I mean, Yancey mentioned the helmet communication. I think that's certainly going to be college football in general. It's going to be, really interesting. But, uh, I don't know that I've got something that I would say I see as a developing huge story right now. But I will say this: with the playoffs the way they are, I think this really enhances, the interest in college football. With now you have so many opportunities for so many teams, and how it has kind of changed perception. And what I mean by that is, going into a season under Nick Saban for many years, the goal was, at least I'm talking about from fans or whatever, uh, go undefeated, or, we got to get in the SEC championship game, win
Yeah.
the SEC championship game, and get into 14 playoff. Now it's really like, okay, you got to go 10-2.
Yep.
You get to 10-2, and you're in, right? So
Yep.
it's not so much about winning every game anymore. If that makes sense. I know it sounds odd, but we were going through that yesterday on my website. You go 10-2, you're in.
Rodney, that's why it's so important to let your guests talk, even if there's a pause. And I'm glad we let you finish because what you just said, Yancey, wouldn't you agree? That's some
Yeah.
powerful stuff. Rodney, hey, and by the way, check his book out, Bigger Than Bama. You can see it behind me on the set. Great book by one of the best people. And by the way, I really appreciate both of y'all, how the interaction, the two of y'all together. A lot of respect for both of you, and I can tell y'all respect each other. So, Yancey, go ahead.
I mean, I think that's exactly right. You have, I mean, college football is shrinking. The importance and relevance of college football with fans throughout the country, because there were legitimately 4 to 6 teams
Yep.
that had a chance, for postseason play before the season started. Now you're opening it up. Now you got 25, 30. Imagine if you expand this to 16 teams. Now you're going to go to 30, 35 teams that feel like they've got a chance to make the playoffs. The excitement, the season tickets, the merchandise, the TV ratings, everything opens up, and it doesn't become so small when
Yep.
you open the playoff system up. And that's where we're headed, because look, football's still got to pay for all the other sports.
Yeah.
And now you got revenue sharing. And
Yeah.
now they're giving 28, 30 million. We all know that number's going to grow and grow, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to open up even more. There will be a 16 team playoffs book sooner than later, and it will go up even higher than that. So it's the product's going to get better and better.
Yeah, and Rodney, look, I know you're walking into practice, and Yancey, hang on here with us, and Rodney, I know you got to get off, but let people know how they can follow you. Keep up with all the great work you're doing, because folks, I know people. I was introduced to Rodney by people who know what they're talking about, but you and Gary Harris, who's on here, Kirk McNair was on with us. Man, we got the best of the best covering Alabama. And Rodney, let them know how they can follow you. And let's do this again next Tuesday.
Right. I appreciate it, Rob. It's just TighterInsider.com. It's only $48 a year if you're an Alabama fan. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check. It gives you all our premium information, but also.
Yeah, we may have lost him, but Rodney,
they got under the bell towers.
That's right. There's a big zapper there that like no communications beyond here. It's just a big magnet floating in the field, like beep, like some alien thing. We got a regular Buck Rogers over here. I say, son.
I think the interesting thing about Alabama right now is with DeBoer is that he's been labeled a player's coach and laid back and much more approachable than a Saban, and so they relate that and say, well, practices are more easygoing and stuff, and it's been the opposite at Alabama. I mean, very physical, grueling, long practices, right? And I think that's the story of the preseason camp for Alabama to me, is that, yes, they've got a player's coach, and yes, he's laid back, but don't mistake that for physicalness at practices and the mentality that, hey, once you get, between these white lines, it's all business. So I think that's really been the story for Alabama's camp to me.
Yeah, and around the league, and you look at Ole Miss. I mean, the question is, can Lane Kiffin get this monkey off his back? Beat Georgia. Doesn't have to play Bama this year, and Auburn, but Auburn's not in that playoff conversation this year. But they still got to play Oklahoma. They've got LSU. That's a night game.
Yeah.
They got to, and the game we all talk about it, November 23rd down in the Swamp against Florida. Yancey, look. One last thing before we let you go. People listening on this show, watching on this show, they're Oklahoma fans or whatever. They've never been to Oxford before. Tell them where to go to find out the best information, because you and I had lunch a couple of weeks ago at the Tallahatchie Gourmet Grill down there below Nielsen's on the square.
Yeah.
As Jerry Clower, I know he's a Mississippi State guy, would say, oh, man, God, that was good. And they didn't even have the gumbo.
Well, if you're talking about a day game, everybody, there's so many options. I don't want to. It's game is I want to direct you away from the crowds is the problem, but there's going to be no voiding the crowd, so you might as well go in there to Ajax. I mean, you got to go. Yeah, it's a staple. You got to try that before the game, for lunch or something like that. And then go up to City Grocery and have a Bloody Mary if it's a morning game. If not, go over there and have a margarita at Proud Larry's. That's really, I would send you to the staple spots. Yeah. You got to try those first and then branch out.
Yeah. Well, Oxford is an incredible place. Look, we're going to wrap it up. Again, Yancey, absolutely love having you on here. Wild start this morning. We got the best executive producer in the world, Brendan Martin. Hey, support all of our sponsors. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We're all blessed. Find ways to bless others and find excuses to win. See you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for watching.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are forsaken.